Um, we have so much that we would love for everyone to hear from you. There's so much wisdom. You have extraordinary stories. And I kind of thought it would be fun to shake things up a bit. And kind of as we're wrapping up this day, to give you an opportunity to hear, you're all so incredibly brilliant. I'm in awe of you. I also feel that there's a story behind the story. There's a big why you're in this room and why you've committed to what you're doing. So you each have a mic. Would you mind, Anjula, can I start with you? Because I love the confidence thing you talked to me about.
I got the hot seat right here.
Yeah, you do. You got the hot seat, girlfriend.
Okay, so I'll try and keep it super short. I grew up in England, two Brit girls here. I grew up in England at a time when there was kind of like this neo-Nazi rising in England, and I grew up in a very, very white area outside of London, about 40 miles north. And I grew up with very little confidence. I grew up seeing role models and women on TV that didn't look like me. And when they did look like me, they had really horrible stories that didn't represent my life. But everybody treated me as if they did represent my life. So I went through a lot of racism. And, awful things for a child to go through. Things like being at school and nobody wanting to hold your hand during sort of physical activities because they thought the colour would come off. And people laughing at me for all sorts of things that just I thought weren't my fault. And so I grew up with very little confidence, and I decided when I was very young that the media was responsible for how I was treated. So if there was something, and you grew up in England, so you probably totally understand all of this, but every time there was something on TV, well, very few times there were South Asians on TV, but when they were hugely stereotypical and negative. And the next day at school, I'd be bullied 10 times harder. So fast forward, often there weren't very many women either, but fast forward, I went to university, moved on with my life, and then I came to America, and America has been, like you said, been a huge journey for me and been a gift to me. I came here as a female minority. I raised money, I raised venture capital, I raised about $7 million. I started a company which was all around cross-cultural entertainment. I took everyone from like Lady Gaga to 50 Cent to Enrique Iglesias to India, and then I brought Priyanka Chopra over here. And I decided that I wanted to change the face of media and bring more color and more diversity to media and have women that looked like me and represented me. And I thought that if I could change the face of media, then I could change every single girl deciding whether she was going to write that business plan or not. Because if she saw a woman out there that looked like her, that had confidence and presence, that would inspire her, because it would have inspired me. So I've since then been investing in a lot of women. I've invested in a whole bunch of startups, all female-led, all but one. And I also brought Priyanka Chopra out here, as you guys know. And really, it's just been this journey of, figuring out how to help women. And I resonated so much with what you said, because I believe that, I didn't have women that helped me, but I've helped a lot of women. And in turn, that has just nourished me in a way that I can't even explain. And then when Girl Up came around, I was like, oh my God, this is so for me. So anyway, I've gone on a lot, but that's kind of my story.
A lot. There was a lot there in a short time, and yet what was so beautiful about this, and this is why thank you for going there for me, is I wanted you to hear, you get to see and read the bio, and she's here and she's investing in Girl Up in a way that's far beyond, it goes to the heart and to the why. So it's just magnificent. And then we were out in the hall talking the difference between seeing a girl walk around with their head down and their eyes down versus being able to look up at the world. It's one slight shift, gang, and we were talking about that. It makes a dramatic impact, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just even very simple things like that. Like I speak to women that go into, to raise money, venture capital, and I say, stand up, put your head up, put your shoulders back, go in with confidence, go in with attitude, because the one brilliant thing about life is nobody knows who you're going to be tomorrow. Like, you could be the next Mark Zuckerberg, you could be the next Steve Jobs, and nobody knows that. So you've got to go in with that kind of attitude.
Which is so perfect to transition us right to the beautiful lady sitting next to you. And man, is there a story there that we have to tell. This is powerful. And talk about being in the boys' world. I've been in that industry in insurance, so in the Lloyds. And you just have a magnificent diamond story. So I know you're like, which one?
I know, I have so many of them. So let me just say, for Lloyds of London, 325 plus years, and we have just got our first female CEO. That's amazing. And I'm telling you, she is changing the face of Lloyd's because it really is a boys' club. It's a very old establishment, and they very much still like to see some of the ladies in very short skirts, very high heels, walking around the underwriting room floor because that's how they'll give them business. So we still have a long way to go from Lloyd's. There's a lot of work to do. So let me tell you a little bit about me and how I got involved. So I had a generally normal upbringing, and you're probably thinking, where is she going with this? Generally normal upbringing. I went to school, went to university, decided to start in somewhere in HR, ended up in IT, did that for a few years and decided that I'd move back into human resources because if I didn't do it then I wouldn't get there. And I've spent the last 10, 12 years or so in diversity, working very much at the core of business in terms of how do we change diversity in action. How do we make sure that people know what they need to do, how they need to do it. Let's not just talk about it, let's not just commit to it, let's tell people what they need to do and how they get that done. And generally that's a fairly easy way to go, and I got involved with Girl Up because by a chance meeting, someone said, you've got to get involved. And it was a great opportunity. I spoke to Melissa and I thought this is fantastic. And then we went to Ethiopia with Rocio, who's here as well, and Monique. We all went to Ethiopia, and when I sat in the airport at Addis Ababa, I thought, oh my gosh, why am I here? Like, there are all these other amazing people come in, and they actually do something, and all I do is work for a firm. So I don't have a space, I don't have a place to be here, and I don't have a right. And it wasn't until we got to the refugee camp in Jijiga, and we were sitting in the same room that Melissa talked about earlier, talking to the mum and talking to the girls, that I realised why I was there. Because that mum had had her first child at 15, and so had I. And I sat there and thought, I know what it's like to want your children to achieve. And I know how important education is, because without my education, I wouldn't be where I am today. And it was such a pivotal moment to sit there and realise that I have a place, I have a story, I have a message to share with these mums, but also to these girls, that at your age, I had a child. I know exactly the challenges that you are facing and the challenges that you want to overcome. And at that point, I stopped being afraid to share that I had my son, who's now graduated, by the way. I'm like, not much now. My daughter's off to university in October, and, you know, God willing, I am blessed to have put those children through university, through school, to get them where they need to get to today. And it's so difficult to talk to people in business and say, hey, this is where I was. I was a 15-year-old mum, 16, I had a baby. And they look at you and they think, oh, who are you? Somebody draining our social system, somebody living on welfare, living in a flat somewhere that we're having to pay for? Or am I somebody that's at the top of my field, that sits on a board of a school, that is privileged to work with an organisation like Girl Up, thank you, and all of the things that I have to offer? What about all of that? And people don't always think that. So I have a story to give, and that's why I'm here.
And that is what I wanted you to hear. And it's a beautiful story. And can we just have to do this, because we're standing out there, you know, and we're talking and I'm getting to know everybody. And the way you told that story, though, it was so real and apropos to what's happening today in this world. And it was the big why for Girl Up for you, empowering these young women. But just to hear you tell it, like when you sit there in like an HR interview, do it. Go, girl. I got to hear this again.
Okay.
This was so good.
So what I tend to do is I ask people, who am I? And they look at me and I go, okay, I'm female and I'm black. And I go, oh, not sure we should say that. Okay, then we move on. I ask them, am I married? And they start looking. Do I have children? How old are my children? Then I ask them, how old am I? And they have to give an answer. I give them that rule at the very beginning. And then I say, so my children are 23 and my daughter's going to be 19 on Sunday, which is why I have to leave tomorrow. She wouldn't forgive. Then I say to them, and I'm 39, although they often say I'm 48. Why, I don't know. Not because they're looking at me, but if they thought my children were younger, then they would go for younger. They say I'm 48, I tell them I'm 39, and then they have this look. And they're calculating let me help you out. Let me give you the numbers. And I say, that look, that thought, that moment that just went across your mind, just that very second, that's what we need to get over.
That's profound. Thank you, Pauline. And that says it all about society and the shifts that we're making. All right, Chief Troublemaker. I love that on your bio.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, but I think just to wrap it up, I've been, or each of you are, I'm not black, but I'm pretty close right now. And I just came from Davos, and I'll give you a background on me, but I just brought the Girls Lounge to the World Economic Forum, and it was really scary, actually, because I got all these, we were invited to come. The Girls Lounge at Davos, the World Economic Forum, where it's all world leaders and less than 18% of people there are women. So we called it the Girls Lounge at Davos, the place for the 18%. And when we were going, I got phone calls from Davos saying, well, maybe you want to change the name because we're women, we're not girls, and we don't like being called girls. And I thought, God, our name is the Girls Lounge, and the difference between girls and women in the social world is age, or maybe it's when you get your period, or when you have sex for the first time, or when you have a child, or I don't know the defining moment, but you do go from a girl to a woman at some point. And I talked about the difference between girls and women in the corporate world is mindset. It's really mindset. Women at the top have already been conditioned to be competitive with one another because there's such a scarcity of jobs. We've been taught to not support each other and to step on each other because we've got to get over that dead body to get to the top. And that's bullshit. And sorry.
We're not live streaming, it's okay.
We talked about passion to action. That's it's a passion word. And it's bullshit because, here I was the only female in the top 25 in my entire career of market research. I am the pioneer of online research, so I migrated research from offline to online in a day and age where only wealthy old men with broadband were online. Hardly a representative population. And, men would always look at me, I'm 54 with a 19-year-old, and so you look damn good. It took me a lot longer to get there. I have a 19-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a 24-year-old, and I grew up in Los Angeles. I'm a California girl. I'm not from London, and I grew up confident. I was one of 4 girls. My mother always taught me from a young age I could be whatever I wanted to be, so I never thought that there was an issue. And at my parents' parties, my father was a cardiologist. We used to have all these doctors come over, and my job as one of the 4 daughters was to walk around to all the men with a humidor and offer them cigars and chop the cigars. That was my job. And it was later in life that I got introduced to someone in business that said, oh, I was at your house when you were 16 years old and you chopped my cigar. And I thought, well, that is so crazy. I never even thought that was, not an equal society to be in. And one of my first reviews when I was in business development was criticizing me for developing relationships with people. I was supposed to just pick up the phone and do deals. I wasn't supposed to get to know people for who they are. I was supposed to just what they are and how much money they were going to spend and be nice when they had business, but not really understand what the value proposition was. And I knew at the age of 24, even though I didn't know, but I did know, that I was going to have to break the rules to create the new ones, even when I had no permission. I was making very little money in a huge organization, but I kept breaking the rules because I knew I was going to be a mother with children and I couldn't work until midnight, and for no reason. We kept the lights on for no reason. And how do we create this culture of care? So I was one of those women that left to be a CEO of a lifestyle company in a day and age where I didn't even understand lifestyle, and create the new rules, not conform to the rules, but transform the rules to make an environment for the best people to rise to the top and not just the available. And then Girl Up came into my life and became so important to me because I say it's not about a mentor forever. You can have a mentor in the moment and it can impact your life forever, both ways. I just came from Rwanda. We did a girls' lounge at the World Economic Forum in Africa, and we called it the Girls' Lounge, no argument there. And I went to some schools, with genocide, all these girls in high school are orphans, and I met with 500 girls. And I'll tell you that in less than 72 hours, my life changed forever. I met with them and taught them about confidence and about using their voice and how they were as important as boys, but different, and to bring that difference to the table, because that's what diversity is to me. It is not about gender, race, or age. It's about mindset. It's about skill set. It's about making that table better with variety. And I ended up inviting 10 of the girls to the World Economic Forum. 10 of the girls from an orphanage in Kigali to the World Economic Forum, and I sat each girl at a different table with the most powerful women in Africa, world leaders. And I said to them, I want you to introduce yourself to all these women. I want you to engage, because those women are going to learn as much from you as you're going to learn from them. I chose 3 of them to get up randomly through the day and say something. I gave them a sentence to complete. Equality is, confidence means. The 3 that I chose that had this loud voice were not the 3 that stood up. One girl, Esther, stood up in the middle of this day, and she turned to all these ladies. She was shy and timid when I met with her. Stood up with her head up high and her shoulders back, like you tell women to go in for their interviews. And she said, ladies, I want to know from each and every one of you what confidence means to you. Throughout the day, people were referring to Esther, a 14-year-old girl from Rwanda. By the end of the day, a 16-year-old girl named Amen wrapped up the entire Girls' Lounge at the World Economic Forum. She stood up in front of every one of the 150 women and said, today, you all changed my life. I realized that my voice matters. I realized I'm as important and powerful as boys and different. I realized it is my responsibility to give back to all the other girls in the orphanage what I learned here today. This is a 16-year-old girl with confidence abounding, infectious, contagious. I left Rwanda in 72 hours a new person. And when I see the power that we have in each and every one of us to give back with generosity, to give back with love, to give back with hope, to give back with care, and learn even from this next generation. God bless each and every one of us that we have this power in us to do it. We must use it.
Shelley. Oh. I know. This is what it's all about, right here. You got me emotional. Well, all 3 of you did. Wow. You know, and I'm just going to leave this one as open to all 3 of you. Do we have time to take it? No, we got 1 minute. Okay. I was going to say take a few questions. I would just love for anybody sitting in here right now, you've each made a choice, a very intentional choice, to be here, be a part of Girl Up. All of you for a different why. But if you could, would you just, what wisdom, what would you share to somebody that's thinking about, I want to get more involved in Girl Up? What would that be?
I think for me, it's being a voice for women that don't have a voice. It's just simple.
It's that simple.
So I'm going to talk from a business perspective and say, for those organisations that are not involved, this is your opportunity to really think about how you define the future. How do you make sure that we have successful women in our organisations that can help lead our businesses for the future? We need to develop the pipeline, and we need to start with girls. We can't start at the top. There aren't enough women at the top. So we need to develop a pipeline.
Diversity is good for business, period.
Love the way you just wrapped that one up. And you know what, though? You did say something earlier. Diversity is far past gender.
You know,
It's
Davos, we identified, if you can call women and Chinese, put them in the same sentence, keep calling it diversity. Women are 50% of the population. Why are we diverse? It's so stupid. It's like, you know, we have to just make fun of this because it's so silly. I just hosted a panel in Cannes with Saturday Night Live, with all the ladies from Saturday Night Live, and we called it Equality's No Laughing Matter. And I said, you know, I'm typically not funny. I'm not a funny person. But I did something really funny. I created a sign at Davos, and we were selling chocolate for $1 to men and 79 cents to women.